in all honesty, I'd always wanted to move to Tasmania. I like the climate. I couldn't believe how the temperature in Tasmania just varies during a day. So you'd arrive in the morning, it'd be quite cold, and by the mid-afternoon, you'd be stripped down to your T-shirt. The sun would be beating down. This would be in the winter. The sun would be beating down. It would be as hot as. And then 4 o'clock, the sun goes down behind the hills. And before you know it, you can't get enough clothes on. I mean, I remember one day, we only had the one car when we first moved down here, and I was waiting for my wife to pick me up, and I thought I was going to die. And here we are. We've got a beautiful piece of land looking out over the Harts Mountains, the Huon Estuary. Can't beat it. The view out of our window is of the weather coming in from the west over the mountains and over the river, and every day it's different. I mean, we always thought that within a year or so you'd stop looking at the view, but you don't. The neighbour that we bought off, David, lovely fella, he told me that cows would be the thing that would make me happy in retirement. So here I am. I'm breeding cattle. Deep down inside, we're country people. We have the cows. I go and feed them every morning. We have the sheep and the chickens, and so we trade our eggs and some of our meat for vegetables and what have you. But I just don't see how you could live anywhere better than this, to tell you the truth. I just really don't. Community's wonderful. The first time we had a difficult calving, and David was out in the middle of the night. I mean, he's 80, and he was out there in the middle of the night showing me how to help the cow give birth to the calf, and tremendous people. What it is about cows that mean that they have to have their calves in the middle of the night in the pouring rain when they're going to get into trouble, I don't know what it is, but that seems to be the rule. People are very welcoming, actually, surprisingly. I guess there's a little bit of a tension between the incomers who want things to be the way they were in Sydney or Melbourne or Adelaide or wherever it was that they come from, and those people who want to be part of the Huon Valley. So we found that we love the people here. It's we had, when we first moved down here, we'd only just moved into the house about 3 weeks, and there were huge winds, blew the front veranda off. The house had only been lived in for about 3 or 4 weeks, and the front veranda blew off. And every neighbour we had was in, down to the front of the house. Is there anything we can do? I don't mind climbing up on roofs if you want me to nail the sheets of tin down. I mean, you don't find that everywhere, because you wouldn't think it would be like that, really. You'd think, there'd be a certain amount of resentment of the incomers putting the prices of their houses up. And my mum lives in the Cotswolds, and there are no local people living locally anymore. Can't afford it. But without the incomers, there wouldn't be the cafes, there wouldn't be the coffee, there wouldn't be, all the social and cultural things that you'd like to have. But without the people, without the people who come from here, it would just be Toy Town. You can live an entirely 21st century lifestyle down here. Anything you want, you can simply get and enhance your life while still living with beautiful, clean, fresh air, sunshine, views to die for, cows. I do love the cows. In May 2 years ago, my wife asked me what I'd like for my birthday. And she'd bought a series of talking books that were detective stories where the hero was an ex-USAF pilot. And I'd been reading this series of books, and I loved them. I thought this was great, going up flying and what have you. So I said to her, well, how about flying lessons? And she said, no problem, flying lessons, you'll be right, off you go. So I did my searching around, and I found a couple of flying schools in Tasmania. There aren't all that many, in fact. And a chap called Eugene Reed has been teaching flying, recreational flying, for years lately out of Georgetown. And I learned to fly in his Jabiru, which is a tiny little narrow plastic plane, actually made, fiberglass, but really very, very tight. You are extremely cozy. The first time I got into the plane, I thought, if I hadn't told everybody I was going to learn to fly, I would not have set foot in that plane, I'd have turned around and I'd have gone home. But, I did it. And 3/4 of an hour later, I was sold. So I thought I could cut the price down by buying a plane, because I was going to want a plane, and I could then learn in my own plane. So I flew around in a friend's Foxbat. This is a Foxbat behind me. And it's particularly good because it's a short takeoff and landing plane. The area on my farm that I could put an airstrip is only 250 metres long, and it's on a 1 in 10 slope. And there's not a real lot of planes that will fly off an airstrip like this, one way in, one way out. It's unusual, let me say. But the Foxbat is the one that will. So I looked to find a Foxbat, found one for sale, and I said, look, I'll buy it if it's good enough for you to fly it from Geelong to Georgetown. You know, if it makes it to Georgetown, I'll buy it from you. I caught the plane from Devonport to, this is a Qantas plane, this is, from Devonport to Melbourne, and then spent overnight at Norm's place, and then the next morning we flew the Foxy back to Georgetown. Well, that was a thrill. Absolutely beautiful day. It's a 4-hour flight in a light aircraft like this. It'll only do 90 knots, you know, and you've got to go over Bass Strait. And I was too young and naive, not too young, but too naive to realise that if the engine failed, I was going to die. So anyway, we flew over. We had no trouble at all. The skies were blue, absolutely glorious. And we flew it into Georgetown, and she's been mine ever since. Ruby's her name. Beautiful little thing. It's lonely, but you feel, once you're up there, you feel kind of in control of everything. I get to explore everywhere, yes. So, you know, I wake up at 7 o'clock in the morning, think, oh, this is great, go and fettle the plane, get myself into it, and just go for half an hour, 3/4 of an hour's flight, and I can fly, in 3/4 of an hour, I can fly pretty much to the end of the Huon estuary, so circle round over the top of Huonville, and then shoot down the Huon River back towards Judbury, and then back over the hills over Geeston and back home again. And you know, it's just beautiful up there. I mean, once you're 5 miles the other side of Geeston, there just are nobody. There's just nobody but hills and mountains, lakes, trees. There is just nothing. There's no sign of humanity at all until you're almost at Strahan. It's a buzz, really. It's a buzz. You go to places that are just glorious. I mean, the other day I flew down to Melaleuca, but it's beautiful, and that whole area is. I mean, I'm not entirely sure, but it looks to me as if the whole of the area around Melaleuca is just a marsh. It's just silt that's over thousands of years come down from the rivers in the mountains around it. But a beautiful place, and then you can fly from there and come back along the coastline, which is what I did this particular time. I flew back along the coastline, and it's completely unspoilt. There's no way of getting there except by boat, I suppose. Yeah, it's just, I mean, absolutely delightful. There used to be masses of flying down here because the fields were weeded and fertilised by plane. So you go back about 30, 40 years, you'd find that practically every farm around here had a little strip on it, often extremely difficult to get into. When you retire, you can't have nothing to do, can you? So I started by breeding cows, and then we got sheep, and then I got talked into chickens. I was going to build a vineyard. In fact, I got as far as building a vineyard and planting the vines, and then I learnt about flying, and the vines all died. And the one problem, I guess, with the Huon Valley is that economically, farming is sort of on its way out, really. There are niches that work, but running cattle, it's very hard to make a living. But you know, where else would you live? If you go and live where farms are viable, then you're talking commercial farms, commercial sizes, you know, hundreds of thousands of acres, and that's not the kind of village life we were looking for. You know, the only thing I'd say to anybody who was thinking of coming and living in the Huon is, don't think, do. It's really is. It's as near the earthly paradise as you're ever going to find, and we do get all the seasons, but it's the greatest place to live.